Welcome to Oneness and Wellness. We're here again with Vortex Healing with Lorraine Goldblum and Marsha Reddington Lawton, and this is part of a whole series on issues. And the issue that we're looking at today is loneliness. And it's a pretty important issue when you're talking about holiday time.
Absolutely,
and people that are alone in their environment. And I had a story about a man in London who had a high-paying job, and then he found out that there were all these elders who were really, they were so lonely that they were in solitude in their whatever place they were living in. And so he decided to give up his job, and he started to work at, and what he called it was, they were chronically lonely. It became a chronic ailment. And so he started doing it, and he started something called Befriend. And he started this whole organization, and people go out and they visit with elders who are isolated and befriend them in a very special way, so that he's trying to take on that issue of loneliness.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
So please, tell us a little bit more about loneliness and maybe even the difference with being alone.
Yeah.
And what the difference is between the two.
Sure. There's a lot to talk about. And in Vortex Healing, we're looking at issues, taking them on. Issues are basically an experience of separation. An experience of separation that manifests physically, psychologically, emotionally. And the nature of Vortex Healing is about waking up out of those issues. And when you do a Vortex Healing session, it's not an idea that you're just channeling energy at something to make it go away. You're actually bridging awareness into what that issue is and how it holds you on all of these different levels. And so when I was making my list of issues to talk about, we've talked about shame, we've talked about issues with money, we've talked about anxiety. If you're really looking for an issue that models the experience of separation, loneliness seems like a great topic.
Really good one.
And I did a survey. My organizer, Hillary, Hillary, we love Hillary. She helped put together this survey of what issues people wanted to address. When I do live events, I always do a healing to help demonstrate what Vortex Healing is and show the power of it. And so, my community, submitted what they wanted to work on. And loneliness came out really towards the top of the list, and I was surprised. But when I started researching it, I realized there's an epidemic of loneliness everywhere. And I thought, isn't that interesting? In New York City, which is where I'm from, loneliness was such a big issue. It's a tremendous issue. And how we are living, even though we spend a lot of time together, and there's a new world of social media and continuous interaction, we're losing a sense of what it is to be truly intimate. And so many of us are actually quite lonely.
And you can be living with someone, or more than one person, and still feel that loneliness.
Yeah. There's a kind of loneliness, and especially with the holiday season coming up, it just seemed all the better to talk about this, because there's the kind of loneliness where, you don't have a lot of friends or family or a partner, and you don't have anywhere to go. And then there's the loneliness where you have all of that and still feel lonely within it. They're both loneliness. We still experience that kind of isolation, and it's very, very difficult to address.
Yeah, I think even, I think sometimes when I have felt lonely, and I have a wonderful husband and partner, but we have different interests.
Yeah.
Very, very diverse interests. So sometimes I think he doesn't really understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Or he might say, well, you don't really understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So we miss each other.
Well, that's the key to loneliness. It's not about common interests. It's about if we feel seen and connected to.
Right.
I can, share an interest with you, And even though it may not be your interest, you can still meet me and be happy about it. And even if you're not interested in baby animals, which is an interest of mine, as we discussed in the last, you can still meet me in the heart and say, oh, that's great. Look how you light up when you talk about that baby sloth video that you watched. Or maybe I'm pushing the baby animals too hard, but you know what I'm saying?
Yep,
You can have,
exactly.
I know, my husband has certain interests that, they're not mine, but they make him so happy.
Right.
And it makes me happy that he's
happy.
But it's that willingness to be seen and meet and be met. And when we don't have that, we get lonely. We get lonely. And something that I've been observing and sort of looking at this issue as it sits in everyone, and we all suffer from loneliness on some level, is how in today's culture with social media and technology, and that we can instantly text and webinar and Skype, and we're in touch with each other all over the place, we still feel lonely. Because in a way that kind of interaction doesn't have to, but can create kind of a buffer. And it can take us out of the moment. What I've noticed is that a lot of it's so socially acceptable these days to check that text. Oh, excuse me, let me just, we're just, in board meetings, at the dinner table, at a funeral. It's actually become acceptable to check that real quick. It's acceptable to step out of that moment. And we're getting so used to that we don't realize what we're missing anymore.
What really is annoying to me is when I'm in a restaurant and there's two people and they're having dinner together and they're both on their cell phones.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
You know, where is that intimacy? Where is that moment?
Yeah.
Appreciating that moment that you're together.
Right.
You know?
And those things can be a great tool. I mean, I love Skype. I can chat with my friend in London, and we can experience our friendship and our intimacy in that way. So it can be a tool. At the same time, I think for many people, all of us on some level, it's also a buffer. We can escape into it as much as we can use it. It's really our choice, isn't it? And how we experience life. Are we going to experience it directly in presence, or are we going to sort of, substitute this?
Right. And the difference between being alone and choosing to be alone and loneliness, that's two different issues.
Absolutely.
Because I think a lot of people, I have a friend, and she really does choose, not all the time, but she chooses to be alone.
Yeah.
Gardening is really a big plus for her, and she finds a lot of joy in being in that garden and working, and even though she's alone, she's not alone because she's in her heart.
She's not lonely.
No, she's not at all lonely.
Yeah. I love to be alone. And part of that is because it allows me room to just feel how I feel and be with how I am without judgment. Some of it is a safety issue. If I'm going to put cards on the table, no, I'm serious. Some of it is that, if I'm with people, because of my own insecurity issues, sometimes you have to be on, you have to be whatever. And when I'm alone, I don't have to worry about that. So some of it is just that. But also some of it, when I'm alone, I have that chance to breathe, to be in my body, to what do I feel like doing right now? Not what do I need to do with the group, or what is the group do? What do I feel like? A practice of I feel like having a cup of coffee. I feel like taking a walk. I feel like whatever. That moment of self-reflection is the power of solitude. And the beauty of it. But the loneliness is when you don't feel that you're you're connected. Loneliness is the pain of separation.
I think that's so true. And, another thing that I'm aware of, for example, there's sometimes that I will, I walk with a couple of different people. If they're not available to walk, I walk by myself. But I know that other people would say, oh, I won't walk then. You're not walking, so I won't walk.
Yeah.
And, wouldn't go out by themselves and walk.
Right. Right.
And so what is it? Is it the companionship that you don't want to be alone?
Yeah.
And so you choose not to do it at all. It's
There are some people who are afraid of being alone too long. I think because they might not want to feel what they're feeling, or because they need a kind of self-reflection to, process where they are. There are many reasons. But you can still feel loneliness in a large group, or with a partner, which is particularly agonizing, because those moments when we're like, I have a partner, I'm at a party, this should be, it's the shoulds, right? The shoulds will get you every time. I should be happy, this should be great, but it's not. We still feel cut off. Well, then that's something to do with us. And we have to take a good hard look at, where is our loneliness coming from? Where do we want to be seen that we're not seen? Where do we want to connect that we're not connecting? What do we need to do to come out of that?
One time in running a group, a woman had come new to the group, and she was so profoundly, still deeply in mourning of her husband who had passed over 20 years before.
Yeah.
And she came up after group, and she asked me a question. And my response was that I just wanted to invite her to think about how lonely she was for herself, because she was in service to all her children.
Yeah.
She had always served her husband. And she stopped in a moment, and she said, I think I need to talk about this.
Yeah.
6 months later, she was on a Greek island
Yeah.
for the first time out of the country, on vacation. She ended up rewriting her life because it really meant something to her. She was lonely for herself.
Yeah.
And isn't that what lonely is too? Because you're describing being able to enjoy your time by yourself. Well, you're a fine lady. You're a great friend. You're fun to be with. Isn't it fun to be with yourself? You need your own time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not, I don't think we're encouraged to do that.
No. Less and less.
Less and less in the culture we live in, So, I mean, that's a big part of it. And so how are we raising children? It's the, you look at that. So what will the next generation be like?
I had hours as a kid playing by the creek, wandering around the yard, doing nothing in particular except playing with my own imagination.
Right.
And time is so structured today, isn't it? Classes and things, and everything is just so, there's no room to discover what it means to be alone. Is that entertaining or not? Is it uncomfortable or not? We don't even know anymore, because we don't really, it doesn't seem like we have a lot of that
We don't have
space.
the experience.
And even if we're in a room alone, well, then we have our gadget.
Absolutely.
And so,
And that's a very important point, I think.
Yeah.
Let us think about that as we take a short break. We'll be right back. Thank you for watching. For more information, check out our website, www.onenessandwellness.com. Thank you. Look forward to hearing us, and watch our show.
If you'd like more information about Vortex Healing, you can go to my website, LorraineGoldblum.com, or Vortex Healing in general, you can go to vortexhealing.org, where you can get more information on other teachers, as Vortex Healing is taught all over the world.
Welcome back to Oneness and Wellness. I'm here with Lorraine and Masha, and the issue is loneliness. And we've been talking about the difference between being alone and loneliness, and then, how we can address that in our own lives.
Yeah.
So, it's a really important, I think this is a very, very important issue.
Yeah. It's as I said earlier, it's become an epidemic.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
how you address any issues, first and foremost, to realize that you have it and that it's an issue. You know, the danger of any issue is we become so identified with it, we don't even see it. That's just my life now, right? But when we realize that's how we're actually feeling, we're feeling disconnected, we're feeling lonely, then you're in a position to take action. And with the culture today, I think a lot of us don't even realize when we're feeling lonely because there's so much activity
It can keep you occupied.
that can keep you occupied, and you have this sense of connecting. And sometimes you really are. You know, we were talking during break about the positive aspects of social media and how Facebook and all these things can be a very powerful tool for transformation, but then it can also be an escape, and you're communicating with people through tweets, and you're not necessarily really connecting.
Right.
And I think for many of us, we've forgotten the difference. You can also sort of put stuff out there on social media and not take responsibility for it. And so, you know, this is where you have feelings hurt and
Right.
bullies and
Right.
all of
Right.
that.
That
And
happens.
and we just, I don't think we've learned how to be mature in the use of it yet. But it does create this faux sense of connection, and it isn't necessarily real connection. And we forget what that really means.
You know, one of the, I certainly agree with that. And one of the issues that was brought up by one of our audience members was talking about how women, you know, and gender specific, you know, being women
Yeah.
who have been used to taking care of the husband and the children and the family and
Yeah.
everything. And then the partner passes away.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they're alone. They don't know how to address that, how to really begin to look at themselves
Yeah.
and say, well, who am I? How do I want to live? What do I want to do?
Yeah.
And I think that's I saw that with my mother, you know, and which really kind of was a good lesson for me, because then I said, that's not going to happen to me, because I'm not going to, you know, be wondering about, you know, why doesn't anyone call me anymore? Pick up the phone, Mom, and call whoever you want to call. She could never really get herself to the place where she would do that.
Yeah.
You know, so there was that loneliness, you know, that was there. But I think I think it's true. It can be
Yeah.
very gender specific.
It is, and I think, you know, with loss, there's going to be an element of loneliness. Of course, you just miss that person, and grieving is a whole several episodes worth of that I want to explore and do. But I think, you know, an excellent point that was raised during the break was that we do experience a certain level of validation through other people, and we get used to that. And then when that's gone, we have to take that time to say, okay, what am I feeling now? What do I do? How do I want to spend who am I now
Right.
in this moment
Right.
as compared to who I was, or perhaps who I imagine myself to be in the future? You know, what's going on now? And that's a very hard and humbling thing. And in terms of you know, women, we're sort of talking about, there's a lot of pressure to find a partner, to look a certain way. There's just a lot of pressure for everyone.
Exactly.
But
Regardless of age.
regardless of age, regardless of gender, but you know, there's a lot of pressure to find a partner, because we imagine if we have a partner, we're happy. And maybe we are if we're blessed and have a healthy relationship,
it's a
but it
good
has to
relationship.
start with us.
Right.
We can't turn to someone else to make us happy. And if we're lonely ourselves, we're going to be lonely with a partner.
Absolutely.
We're not going to, you can't expect that person to fix your loneliness.
That's
At
right.
some point you
to
have to
provide
take,
all the.
right, you're going to have to address that separation pain, you know, in yourself, and not expect someone else to fix it. And that's what our issues are. They're an experience of separation. And getting awareness into that can be tough.
Yeah.
You know, and if the tools are used properly, they bring your awareness into that. But we all experience separation. It's the nature of being in form. But when we come back to intimacy, not just romantic intimacy, but intimacy with life, the relationship with life, it's really just the divine recognizing itself through form. And that's why you can have a beautiful moment of intimacy even without an extensive personal history. You just really connect with someone over the grocery line. You laugh about that avocado that hit the ground, whatever. You can share a beautiful moment of intimacy with someone without that because the connection is there. But the separation experience keeps us out of it.
It's really interesting. Even being at the gym today, there was a man that he was on the stairs and he was putting one foot up and the other kind of down. And I said, "What are you doing?" Because it was not the stairs; it was like the stairs coming up to the gym. And he said, "Well, I'm trying to fix my lower back. I was told if I just put this foot down and bring it up." And I said, "Oh, show me what you're doing." So.
Yeah.
And then we got to introduce ourselves, and it was very nice. It was like a nice moment.
A moment of connection.
Yeah, a moment of connection with a stranger.
Yeah.
That was okay.
And that came through an open heart.
Right.
Just like walking through the woods.
Right.
If you're busy in your head and your shopping list and who you're mad about and
Yeah.
or walking through the woods by yourself and you see the life there.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the cycles there.
Yeah.
And you hear the birds. You can come back out of a walk having an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Simply because you were present for it.
Yeah.
And it opened your heart. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people say they can't visualize opening their heart. And, it's really, it's interesting because I have an open heart, but I said, what do you mean you can't visualize opening your heart? And that's...
Well, someone brought up during break vulnerability.
Absolutely perfect.
And how difficult it can be to be vulnerable. It's scary.
Right.
But if you have the courage to go there, that is the only way to connect. That's really the only way to have intimacy and to deal with loneliness is that open heart. You can't work around that in any way. And so putting yourself out of the way, putting your issues down enough to open your heart, that can be really hard, but there's no other way around it. And we are afraid to be vulnerable, and that's why social media and all that, it can be a comfortable buffer because we can kind of do it but not have to do it all the way, and then we forget what it really looks like
And feels like.
and feels like. Thank you. Well said. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we forget. We forget.
And because we all have a history, and we have so many stories from the past, how we were raised and everything else. So it's really so important to be in the moment.
Yeah. Which is what all of this work comes back to. Awakening is about putting everything out to realize who you really are in this moment. That's where presence is the master healer at the end of the day. And so we have tools, we work on our issues, we work on our conditioning, but it's all to come back here, right here, right now, and to continuously reassess the here and now.
And if you really want to think about it, times when we were most vulnerable, such as the first time you see your child's face, or the moment you realize that this is the person that you've been waiting your life to meet, or that sunrise, or the whatever, it doesn't matter. But those moments that are richest are when we're the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right.
And the strongest.
Yes.
Vulnerability is actually a strength, not a weakness. We don't experience it because it's scary to go there, but when we're actually there, it's great strength.
It's a great strength. And I've experienced that, and I'm sure that you've experienced that also. So thank you for being with us, and thank you for watching, and continue to watch because we'll have more in these series in the months to come. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.